it cellularly in parallel hardware also suggests that it should be perfectly possible to simulate it with the appropriate parallel structured software. So that was what we did, and we used it to kind of, again, turn the brain against itself and play tricks on the brain. So the problem here is that you want to do cloning. I'd like to clone the sun from this picture to this picture. So I'm going to take the sun and just move it across into that domain omega there, just going to drop it in, there it goes. But of course you can see that it doesn't fit. Would have been better maybe if I'd left the yellow frame out, but even with the yellow frame you can see that it's dark right up to the edge of the frame and light right next to it, and there's no way that that piece of clone material is going to fit the host image. I mean, why should it? And so you could imagine doing laborious hand compensation, maybe in pieces, to get this thing to fit the image. But what we've done is we've exploited the fact that the human vision system discounts these gradients of illumination. It acts as if they weren't there. And so what that suggests is that as a designer of image processing software, you should be able to add gentle gradients of intensity, and the visual system won't notice a thing. It'll have no idea that it's been fooled. In the real world, it doesn't see these gradients, and in the image, it doesn't see them. So here we are. We've added a gentle illumination gradient, and the mathematics is not particularly important, except to say that f tilde, which is the notation for the change that you made from here to here, is done in such a way as to minimize the gradient of that change as far as possible. And by minimizing the gradient, by desiring the gradient to be kept as small as possible while still fitting the bill of matching up the boundaries, we minimize the obtrusiveness of the change that is made to the image. Okay, so now we can really do this. We can go into this industry. And so this guy is pretty handsome, but he could be better. We've given him a facial makeover. We take the blemishes and just clone pieces of nice, give him a kind of skin graft, from, it's all a bit gruesome, isn't it, from other parts of his face, and so the little blemishes get taken away. And we can do kind of grosser things like this. So we can take the kids, happen to be my kids, and the bear. I wouldn't normally let them swim together, but I think in this case we can make an exception. And, you can see that the colours of the backgrounds are all different. This is lighter blue, and this is a sort of more muddy blue. And just dropping these guys in is not going to work. But if we drop them in and then allow the software to do its compensation, then you see everything matches. And the user hardly feels a thing. So you, as a user, you grab the cloned stuff and you drag it into the new image. You're holding the mouse button down. It doesn't look right. You release the mouse button, and it does this parallel computation. And the clone material just melts into the background. And if you buy digital image suite, which is on sale from your friendly local Amazon or whatever, you can do all this kind of stuff for yourself. It's great fun. What else can we do? Let's put the rainbow into the scene and the burning oil well or whatever it is, and they just get composed in. And this is a little more difficult because actually the rainbow didn't replace the sky. You see that the rainbow actually combines with the sky, and if you do that wrong, you get a kind of horrid muddy mixture. But by using this kind of illumination compensation, we can get the right kind of transparent effect. And here's the same kind of thing again. We want to drop the helicopter with its smoke trail into the picture. If you do it wrong, the rock kind of boils off into the vapor trail. You really didn't mean that at all. But if you do it right, the separateness is preserved. And I don't have time to explain exactly how we did that twist that keeps them separately, but it's not because I'm being secretive. It really is because we have only so much time. Here we are. I can take the orange texture and the pear, and I can make a porridge. Here we are. There's a porridge and what would the other one be? Can't even say it. Maybe it works in Gaelic. I don't know. And here is the son of Patrick Perez, who was the inventor of all this hole-filling technology, and he took many pictures of his son on the beach, and the idea was to sort of make it all appear in one tableau, but you get these annoying seams on the edges of the tableau. So with a kind of twist on this gradient adjusting effect, we can just make the seams melt away. So now you get lots of little Perez's in various poses on the beach. So, that would be kind of cool if, you're on a photographic service and you wanted to have this effect. That would be nice. And finally, here's the thing we've done most recently, which is a kind of combination of some of these technologies. And again, there's quite a lot going here on here. I don't have time to explain it. This was just presented at SIGGRAPH this summer, which is the big graphics conference in Boston this year. And what we have is a system which completely automatically will take a roll of film in a digital images in a directory and automatically select interesting images and select interesting parts of those images and make a composition out of the images by tiling them together using heuristic packing algorithms, and then finally blend them all together so that you don't see any jerky transitions. So, for example, these two people here, well, you can see from the slight size difference that they're not actually in the same photograph, and yet they're somehow blended together in a way that makes them sit comfortably together. So we can make these as tapestries or autocollages completely automatically, and it only takes 10 or 20 seconds to do this. Because this is, in a way, many of our favourite technologies all piled together to do this. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to talk to you about is, as I said, this is my current obsession, is stereo vision and how we can make stereo vision work. So, do you remember these? About 10 years ago, everybody was sending these for Christmas. Autostereograms, they were on the Christmas cards, and okay, so you may have, if you were around at that time, you may have developed this kind of warped facility for looking at crossing your eyes when you look at pictures, and then you suddenly see things in depth. Have you ever done this? Any of you remember this? And I mean, actually, when you do this, you're really doing a horrible violation to your visual system, because you're kind of crossing your eyes, looking at something which is actually over there, but treating it as if it was here. And this is something which the visual system should never do. And once you've decoupled vergence from accommodation, as they call it, vergence being this movement of your eyes and accommodation being the focus, once you've learned to decouple it, you learn that surprisingly fast, and you can never get the coupling back again. You really do actually undo something in your visual systems which can never be actually done. So perhaps you'd like to try it now. So all you do is you put your finger in front of your face like this, and if you look at the pictures while you're looking at your finger, you'll see your finger doubled. But if you look at your finger while you concentrate on the finger, then you'll see the picture doubled. And actually, that second effect is what you want. You want to kind of look at your finger, but be aware of the pictures in the background. But don't look at the pictures in the background, because look at your finger. And now move your finger in and out like a trombone slide until, if you're lucky, something magical will happen, and you'll all of a sudden see three-dimensional stuff appearing. Yeah, somebody's seen it. It's anybody else sharing the experience? Now you've been prompted now. Yes. What do you see?
Well, I see the heart.
It's a heart. It's a Valentine's Day card, crying out loud. Of course, there's a heart in it. A three-dimensional heart buried in there. So, there are various ahas going on, and others kind of groaning with frustration because they still can't see it, and others saying, I'm not going to damage my visual system just for So supposing we gave this to the computer, this same stimulus. So what I could do is kind of cut out a square on the left, which is what you would see with your right eye if you're doing this hideous eye-crossing trick, and then cut out the square on the right, which is what your left eye would see under those circumstances, and give those two separately to the vision system. And I've taken the colour away because the colour is irrelevant. It's the texture which the vision system is going to use. So the right eye sees this and the left eye sees this, and they're not quite the same. They're similar, the same textures, but the details are different because one is shifted along relative to the other. And now I run a special program, a stereo matching program, which replicates what the brain does with the pairs of images that come into your eye. And this stereo program takes the pair of images and tries to recover the relief, that is, the depth variation in the three-dimensional scene. And there it is. That's what it came up with. So you see, computers in some cases are smarter than humans. 90% of you perhaps, or 80% couldn't see the heart, but the computer could. I don't know how that makes you feel, but... So there's a kind of illusion going on here, which is that you see three dimensions, even though in a sense there aren't three dimensions. I mean, what you're looking at are two perfectly planar images. There is no three dimensions there, and yet your brain sees this illusion, which is a kind of good illusion. It's a helpful illusion, which is the three dimensions buried in the picture. And actually, there are various illusions associated with stereo. Here's the simplest one you can try, which is actually safe to try in the privacy of your own homes. Doesn't do any damage to the visual system. You could try it here if you happen to have a couple of pencils or biros which are identical. But the idea is that you put two objects that are identical in front of one another like this. It doesn't work with fingers because fingers are too fat. But something thin, as the name suggests, nails are perfect. Two identical nails. You put them in front of one another, and the visual system, if you line them up just right, sees two nails side by side. It doesn't see the nails in front of one another. It sees them next to one another. So why is that? Well, here's an explanation of why it might happen. Here, the white circles are the true nails. Each of the true nails gives rise to a couple of rays into the two eyes. Here's a ray into the right eye, a ray into the left eye. And similarly for this true nail, a ray into the right eye and a ray into the left eye. But if instead you paired the rays up differently, supposing you took this ray here with this ray here, then you'd see as an illusion this black-filled dot here, which represents an illusory nail, a ghost so-called, and another ghost here. And there's nothing logically wrong with these ghosts. This is a perfectly consistent interpretation of the images that were presented to the brain, so of course it's perfectly fair that the brain should see them, and it can do that. Well, I can't explain to you the whole of how stereo vision works, but suffice it to say that there's a whole sequence of tricks and algorithms that you have to bring to bear. Exploitation of 3D geometry, like the homogeneous transformations that we were talking about earlier. So one example is that, if I'm looking for the partner of a point in an image, because this is what you have to do in stereo. You have to take every point in the left image and find its partner in the right image. That's what the brain is doing. It's just incredible that the brain is doing this with perhaps 1 million points that you see in one image, and it's making those million matches 25 times a second, 30 times a second, so 30 million of these matching computations a second. It's incredible the amount of parallel computation that's going on in your brain. And if this point here, let's say we were trying to match that one, as it happens, in a 30 millionth of a second, and if you had to search the whole of this image to find its partner, that would just be an incredible number of computations. So that would be 30 million times the number of pixels in this image. Even for the brain, this is amounting to trillions of computations. Even the brain would find this hard. But luckily, the geometry of three dimensions comes to your aid, and it turns out that the partner of this corner here must lie along a particular line. So actually, all you have to do when you're looking for the partner of this guy is to search along a particular line in the right image. And so that cuts down the scope of the problem somewhat. And there are various other physical constraints and tasteful tricks which cut down the amount of search that you have to do to get down from the trillions of computations to near this trivial 30 million per second, which the brain seems to do with ease. Mind you, the visual cortex is pretty big. It's the whole of this kind of lump over the back. So you did have to give over a lot of your brain to doing this. So if you were wishing that your sense of smell were better, that's why your smell brain got used up historically to do vision better, because it turned out smell wasn't as important. So how are we trying to use stereo? Well, actually, my dream is that we can make a contribution with video to teleconferencing. So the thing that is worrying many of us, politicians and scientists and the public alike, is global warming. What the heck are we going to do about the amount of energy we want to consume, the amount of junk we want to dump into the atmosphere? And surely the solution of this is going to be multifaceted. But one very important component, I believe, is that teleconferencing has to get better. At the moment, teleconferencing exists, but it's hideous. You have the teleconferencing room in your workplace maybe, but everybody hates to use it because starting it up is horrible, and when you get it started up, kind of the picture that you see of people at the other end is pathetic, a tiny little picture. There's no kind of emotional sense coming from a picture of that poor quality, and generally the experience is unrewarding. And there are many other aspects of teleconferencing that need to be got right before the whole thing works. So I've just been in Edinburgh for the week, collaborating with some of the university there. What I would love to be able to do is to go home to Cambridge and work with my colleague, Professor Williams, on the paper that we're writing, and I'd like to be able to sit down with him and spend an hour going through the paper, putting red ink on it, criticising, maybe it was his turn to adjust the paper, so I maybe criticise some of the things he's done, but I want to sort of see him on the video screen there to make sure he's not too upset and I'm not being too brutal here, and or I might want to see if he's kind of smiling, looking as though he understands, or if he's looking puzzled. Kind of all this stuff has to work together: the interaction and the graphics and the video and the audio. I mean, the audio, I believe, has to be really good as well. And I don't know if you had this experience, but certain companies which have really done wonders with IP telephony, one of the things I've noticed is that this certain company has really got high quality audio. I mean, the actual, the bandwidth and the faithfulness is good. And so when you talk to somebody for an hour of one of these high quality audio links, I don't know if this is well known, well understood, but it seems to me that it's sort of effortless and it's comfortable. You can gossip to a friend over a link in a way that you wouldn't do on the telephone. It's kind of tiring to listen to someone on the telephone. Even on the speakerphone, it's kind of, it doesn't sound like them. Whereas on a high quality audio link, it's like having them in the room. And I think there are many of these elements that have to be got right. Well, we're not audio experts, we're not experts in documents, but I hope that we can make our contribution on the video side of things. To begin with, we had this idea that one of the issues with teleconferencing is that if you have a screen and you're going to see a picture of the person you're talking to in the middle of the screen, but where does the camera go? Well, it could go on the left or it could go on the right, but the point is it's not going to be in the same place as the screen, as the picture of the person you're talking to on the screen. So when you look at the person, they're not going to see you looking at them, they're going to see you rudely looking off to one side. So if they look at the camera position on the left, you're looking off to one side. The camera on the right, you're looking off to the other side. Somehow the eye contact isn't there. And eye contact is a very subtle cue. Humans have the ability to detect the angle of somebody else's gaze to within a degree, but very good at recognizing whether somebody is looking at you or not. And so that's a bit of a shame. But if we could solve the stereo correspondence problem, the one that I was talking about before, we could make a cyclops, a device with an eye in the middle. We could take the left view and the right view and actually synthesize the view from the cyclopean eye, as psychologists call it. So that would be like going back to this situation, and it's as if you could drill a hole in your expensive new LCD screen and poke a camera through it, but without somehow disrupting the image. That's what you'd like to be able to do. It's kind of like a teleprompter, but I mean, a teleprompter is a great big, massive piece of hardware, and it's not practical to build a teleprompter into every screen. So it's kind of like a virtual teleprompter. Here's what we'd like to do: to take the left image and the right image and synthesize the cyclopean image. And here we are. You see, he's looking one side there and the other side here. But we can make a video of him looking right at you. This is my colleague Simon Peyton-Jones from the Cambridge lab. So we can make a synthetic version of this camera. Well, it turns out we can kind of do this in the laboratory, but for various reasons, scaling this up to real-time, live, with real cameras is still hard. So we've taken a rain check on that for a while, and we started getting interested in what else we could do with stereo that was a little bit nearer term. So we made ourselves a stereo camera. We call this, we were calling this concept of the stereo camera the 2-cam, but until we properly engineered the 2-cam, we just took ordinary cameras and stuck them together with cyanoacrylate, so we call this the glue cam. And so at the moment we're experimenting with the glue cam, and you see what we can do is take a video of my colleague Antonio Cremonisi, who's worked on a lot of this software, and we can make a version of him in which the background is simply removed. So we can separate, using the depth that you get from stereo, we can separate the entire scene into two layers. Now there's actually quite a lot more going on here than stereo. It's a kind of fusion between stereo vision and that cutting out tool that I showed you earlier on in the demo, which we call grab cut. So it's a kind of live combination somehow of stereo and grab cut doing this this cutting. And now what we can do is we can take the guy and we can put him somewhere he never was. And we can take her and put her somewhere she never was. So I'm going to leave it there because time is running short. This is our vision for the future as researchers. We want to really experiment with radical ideas in teleconferencing. What would it actually look like to have the ideal workstation for teleconferencing? We'd like to have good video, good audio, intelligence built in, document handling, effortless interaction so that you could sit down for an hour with a colleague and just talk to them and feel like it was almost as good as if you were in the room with them, maybe in some ways better than being in the same room, because you could have your meeting recorded, you could have it indexed, you could point to a change in the document maybe and have a replay of the conversation that took place when that change was made and remember why it was that change was agreed. I think the potential is really huge. Thanks very much.